Hello, love and greetings to you. Welcome to the channel for the Marriage Foundation. This is where people come when they want to learn about marriage the right way. I hate to say it, but I'm going to say it anyway. What is out there is mostly wrong. How do I know that? Who do you think you are, Paul Friedman? Well, I used to be a divorce mediator, so I have seen what happens when people go to get traditional marriage counseling. And this was over 22 years ago. But at that time, I had a couple ask me if I could save their marriage for them, that they didn't really want to end their marriage. And I thought, you know what, why not? Let me try. I'm good at communication, I'm good at sorting things out. And so I thought that's what it's all about. And I spoke to some of my therapist friends. They were the ones who sent me the business. And they said, well, just listen to what they have to say and help them sort through their problems. And it occurred to me that's not going to really help them have a great marriage. And if they don't have a great marriage, they're just going to slip back into the same old habits. They're just going to have the same old problems. And maybe I'll fix this surface problem, but then what happens next week or next month or next year? The divorce rate is really high. There's a reason for it. So I did a deep dive into what marriage is all about. And I began with a question that you probably never asked yourself. And when I realized I never asked myself that question, I was amazed, because I take life's chores and missions and things that I do pretty seriously. When I bought a big chunk of land once, and I had to clear out a lot of trees, and I learned everything I could about chainsaws and safety and all of that. And yet with marriage, we don't ask the simple question, why do we get married in the first place? Wow, deep, right? I asked everybody because I couldn't come up with what I thought was a universal response, a universal answer, something that applied to all of us, because all of us get married, and there had to be. So I asked my friends, my family, I asked my kids, I asked everyone I could think of. Even standing in line at Starbucks, I asked people. And everyone said the same thing. Well, I married her because, or I married him because. No, why get married at all? I know you fell in love. We all fall in love with that person. And then we think the next thing to do is get married. But why? And so it finally came to me. And the answer is so simple. It's embarrassingly simple. The answer is because we want to be happy, right? We want to be happier. And we found our soulmate. And so we assume, rightfully, that if we live in our marriage with our soulmate, we're going to be happy. Unfortunately, most people who live with their soulmate end up turning into cellmates. And the reason for that is pretty simple. Where do we learn how to get married? We learn how to get married from television shows and movies and books and magazine articles, and it's all wrong. It's all wrong. People don't understand marriage. If you look up the definition of marriage, you're going to find some trite, stupid answer, like marriage is a legal blah, blah, blah. It doesn't really talk about marriage. I've redefined marriage. I'll share it with you. Marriage is an individual spiritual path. Don't think this is religious. A spiritual path that two soulmates take together. What is a spiritual path? We don't learn much about this stuff, but I'll tell you what it is. A spiritual path is our path to total happiness, bliss, and love. It's the path to God, you might say. And why do we get married? We want those same things. We want to be happy every day of our lives, till the end of our lives, or marriage, if someone passes before the other. And we want to experience unconditional love, which is the real love. You know, when you think about it, nothing else, nothing less should do. Why? Because we are human beings. We have these attributes that set us apart. These people who say we're advanced animals are just stupid. We have a body that has animal qualities. It's driven by the drive to survive. Every living thing is. But the difference is an animal knows itself as its body. We know ourselves as spiritual entities, as souls, you might say, who have a body and who have a mind. And people even get that wrong. We think we have a soul. No, we are souls. We have a body and we have a mind. And we have this amazing gift called free will. So why not choose to do the right thing all the time, that which will bring us happiness and love? And that's where I began working with my first couple. And then I realized that, and I wasn't the one who realized it, the man came back to me and he said, Paul, this stuff is great. Because what we did was we sat in our session and we laid out basically beneficial, detrimental, right? And kind of had an agreement. But it was an agreement he couldn't stick with. He couldn't stick with it because of the same reason that none of us are able to stick with our New Year's resolutions. We are so controlled by our mind. And now I turned to the boss and I said, okay, Lord, tell me, what do I do here? And I'm a meditator. I have been for a long time, since 1972, believe it or not. And so I said, how do we deal with this? And I understood it really well, because in the 90s, I decided that I had an anger problem. I didn't used to think my anger was a problem, but in the 90s, I decided it was a problem and I wanted to get rid of it. And so what did I do? Everything you can ever imagine. And I held back my anger for years, but I never got rid of the anger. Well, what happened was, when I asked him, good lesson, right? We should always turn to him first. What came to me was the answer. And the answer is that our mind belongs to us. It is a possession. And not only do we have the ability to control it, but we have the obligation to control it. We're not supposed to let other people suffer from our anger, from our emotional outbursts, etc. They're not even ours. They belong to the mind, because I started studying the mind. Not from Freudian's point of view. I think it's all wrong. But I started recognizing the mind for what it is. When he gave me this information, because that's the only way for me to put it, because that's the truth, he also gave me this technique. And it's in my books. And it's also, and I talk about it in these videos and in my articles. And in the courses that I have, one for men and one for women, which is for people, it's not for everyone, it's just for those whose marriages are slipping pretty quickly towards divorce. The books are great if you're just having problems, but if you're starting to be concerned that your marriage is going to come to an end, then you need either the course for men or the course for women, depending on who you are. And there you will learn the SO technique. Stop, which is the S, evaluate, which is the E, and W, act with wisdom. We all have the power to do that. And this technique is amazing. I didn't create it. It was given to me, and it's amazing. And so that's in our courses, the SO technique. And it's amazing because now I don't have any anger. I had struggled with the anger for 10 years, never making any headway in terms of getting rid of it. Yes, I learned to manage it. I learned to not, most of the time, let it come out. But with the SO technique, I was able to get rid of it. So, this is what I learned about marriage. I learned that marriage is all about love. It's all about happiness. And with our free will and some techniques, and a lot of these techniques are in my books and in my courses, we are able to have an amazing marriage no matter where you're starting from. And so I started working with couples. When I learned that, I decided, you know what, this is not okay that I'm helping people get a divorce, because now I know the truth. I know no one knows how. And later, years later, a fellow divorce mediator who used to be a Navy SEAL said, Paul, this stuff is great. He wrote out a check for $1,000. We went down to a lawyer friend of his, and he was a lawyer too, but different kind of lawyer. And we started the foundation. It's a nonprofit foundation. So now we're coming to what this particular video is all about. And it is the 10 most unknown do's and don'ts in marriage. So 10 because 1 do, 1 don't, 1, 2. So let's begin and let's get into this. And by the way, if you want to go to our website, please go. It's themarriagefoundation.org. If you want to get these videos regularly, then subscribe to the channel. I'm producing 1 a day. And if you are a therapist, and I have nothing against therapists, it's not your fault you've been mistaught. Everyone has been mistaught. If you're a therapist or clergy and you want to become a TMF, marriage counselor, we now have a course for that too. So number 1, and this is interesting. Stay with me. They're all interesting, but I think this one is so relevant in this day and age. Number 1 is don't think of sex as a form of entertainment, and I could add as a release, because it is so much greater than that. We're not animals. We're not compelled to do what our body is telling us to do. Our body is telling us, and it's a step just beneath the drive to survive, because with procreation, what are we doing? We're creating more of us, which means safety in numbers, and that's the physiological animal purpose, nature's purpose for sex. It's really that simple. But as human beings, and this is where it gets squirrely, you see, if we push God and spiritual stuff out of the equation, then why not just make it all about pleasure, right? But we're greater than that. We are souls, and we have the ability to connect with our soulmate on this very high level of love. And sex is an amazing tool for doing that. Now, you can't go left and right at the same time. You can't go forward and backward at the same time. You can't be doing pleasure with a focus on, oh, how does this make you feel? What about this? Da da da. And connection at the same time. You choose. And if you choose to go for the connection, don't worry about the pleasure. Trust me, it will be there as well. But if you go for the pleasure, recreational sex, then you won't feel the connection. You may say you do, but you won't. It's not possible. And so this is the biggest don't. Don't think of sex as merely entertainment, recreational, or something for pleasure. Bring it up to a higher level. Do use sex as a means to connect your hearts. Do it consciously, not, well, yeah, this feels pretty good. No, consciously. Open up your heart. I like to tell people, think of your heart as having a valve, a doorway, that when you open it, out comes liquid love into your soulmate's heart. You'll feel this. Trust me, you will. Now, this is special for people who are married. People who are not married have a subconscious psychological resistance to opening their heart. Now, if you're living together, you're married. I don't need a document. You don't need a document to prove that you have a lifetime commitment. That's what it's all about, the lifetime commitment. And then that psychological impediment isn't there when you're married. If you're not married, there's layers over your heart that will prevent you from experiencing this. Keep that in mind. It's special. Marriage is very special. Don't think of it as just a document or just a commitment. It's very deep. Number 3, don't live a material life as your main life. I know that the mundane life, having to go to work, taking care of the kids, paying the auto payment, paying rent, paying the electric bill, all this stuff takes up a lot of headspace. It does. Think of that headspace as busy stuff. You got to do it. But your marriage isn't like that. Your marriage, remember, it's intended to bring you happiness and love. And so it's not concerned with the day-to-day stuff. Your marriage should be the focus of your life. It should be held at the highest level where you're thinking about your spouse with love. You want to give. You want to connect. Yeah, you could take care of this stuff. You know you can take care of this stuff. Even when you have something that's a little difficult, you still can take care of it. It's no big deal. But keeping your consciousness on your spouse from your heart with love, it takes some effort to pull yourself out of that mundane consciousness, but you want to, and this is the do, you want to live on the higher planes of love and happiness. These are planes of consciousness, and you have the ability to stay there with your marriage as the tip of the spear of your life. And you will not regret it when you are making that effort, because the result is happiness and love. You have free will. You have volition. There's nothing, you've heard this all the time, there's nothing you cannot do if you set your mind to it. It's setting your mind to it that is the trick. It's knowing about it that is the pre-trick. Now you know about it. Free will, volition, determination. The So technique really helps. Now, I'm just going to throw this in there. If your marriage is already sliding towards divorce, you're finding yourself in a hole where just doing what you'll find in a book, for instance, or in these videos isn't going to be enough. You need, and this is why I was a marriage counselor, a real marriage counselor, helping people with a process that got them strengthened in the right direction, and that's what the courses are all about. So you may want to consider that if your marriage is in big trouble. Okay, so that's 3 and 4. Number 5. This is going to be, you may not like this. Don't expect anything of your spouse. You know, we live in an I, me, mine society. You've heard that a million times. But your vows to your spouse is, I am here for you. I give you my love. I give you my all. And then you go, but what are you giving me in return? And that's not what marriage is all about. And it's not just words. Here's why. Because when you don't expect anything of your spouse, you could go to the next one, number 6, always see their best qualities. When you expect of them, there's a judgment of them because they are not living up to your expectation. So you're not seeing them through eyes of love. You're seeing them through eyes of judgment, through expectation, and it will undermine all of your happiness, because expectations is saying what I have isn't good enough. Well, your spouse is more than good enough. They're your soulmate. Do they have flaws? Hell yeah. Do you have flaws? Maybe more, maybe less, doesn't matter. We shouldn't expect of our spouse, and we actually shouldn't expect of ourselves, other than to continue to work towards the perfection of happiness and love. Those are the perfections that we want. Not the perfections necessarily of how we behave, but going back to how I worked with my first couple, there's detrimental and there's beneficial behaviors of thought, speech, and action. Okay, number 7. Number 7 and 8. Number 7 is don't criticize. Number 8 is do compliment. This should just be taught to us growing up. We want to get along. We want harmony. We want harmony with everyone. This is a good rule of thumb for everyone, but it's especially important for you and your spouse, because you don't want to be criticizing. What happens if you're criticized? You take it personally. There's no such thing as constructive criticism, by the way. How many times have we heard that? What nonsense. It's ridiculous. There is criticism, or there is recognition of their better qualities, which elicits a compliment. You have free will. Choose wisely. Okay. And number 9 and 10, don't blame them ever for anything. Doesn't matter if they did it. Who cares? Instead, ignore their flaws. That's number 10. 100% of the time. You know, I was very fortunate in my life. For 20 years, I was very close to a spiritual mentor. And when I look back and I see how he trained me, I realize he never once told me that I was doing something wrong. And trust me, I did a lot wrong. He was very wise. There's no benefit to the person who's being blamed by them hearing that they did something wrong. It doesn't help them correct in the future. They see it, or they don't see it. Your pointing it out won't help them see it. This is all false. Your job is to love them. Hold them in the highest esteem possible. Be loving, loving. There is no such thing as a loving criticism. There's no such thing as a loving condemnation. There's no such thing as a loving blame. Love, love, and love some more. And it will change your lives, even if you're the only one doing it. So that's it. Hope you liked the video. Hope you got something from it. I'm Paul Friedman. I'm the founder of the Marriage Foundation, although my friend helped. God bless you. I hope to see you again. Take care.